You know, over the past couple of days, there was basically a new Blizzard story every couple of hours. And each time I started to fire up a video to report on what was going on with Blizzard, whether it was Hearthstone, World of Warcraft, or was on their Overwatch team or their esports team, it felt like something new was happening. So I decided to kind of put everything all together, whether it was their the change to the card art, which is suspicious that we're going to go through, the former community manager getting mad that they reopened her position, as well as some other interesting, spicy Blizzard news. So I hope you enjoy kind of this summary type video. But before we get into all that is the Blizzard mess, which is, of course, very, very good, I want to thank this video's sponsor. Remember a few weeks ago when I tweeted out that the channel had a new sponsor that was proud to stand by me and allow me to put their ads in just about any video that I wanted? Well, that sponsor is actually World of Warships. I want to tell you a little bit about it. It's a massive game. With World of Warships, you can command some of history's most iconic war vessels. Unlock new ships as you prepare to dominate the oceans in World of Warships. Each week, there is something new to experience with a steady cadence of new missions, game updates, and events to keep you and your friends engaged for hours on end. Now, here's something really cool and a good reason for you to try it out to both support the channel and see if you like this game. You can score Amazon credits for every shipmate who finishes their milestone in World of Warships with no limit. Just share your referral link with anyone, friends, sworn enemies, coworkers, your grandpa, and get them into the fight. You'll get the same great rewards from Recruiting Station, plus Amazon credits for every shipmate who achieves certain milestones. It's really 3 easy steps. 1, recruit shipmates. 2, shipmates achieve milestones. 3, after the event ends, you'll get Amazon credits for every shipmate who's achieved their milestone. So get into the game, start inviting your friends, check it out, and let me know what you think of the game. I'll see you out there. So probably the most important change, by the way, check out the game. I think you'll like it. I'll play with you when we're streaming on D Live. We'll have some fun. It also supports the channel. Hopefully they'll continue to sponsor us. So there was a quiet change to a couple of cards in the Hearthstone library that sent speculations going about whether or not they were to adapt for the Chinese market. We've seen this, obviously, out of Blizzard with their hilarious Diablo Immortal that nobody asked for. We've seen this with Rainbow Six Siege, I believe, where they had to remove slot machines and images of skulls, all sorts of little things that I think in their case, in Rainbow Six's case, they eventually did roll those changes back because ultimately the problem I have with these artistic changes is, first of all, they're sad. But second of all, you're changing fundamentally a product that somebody has already purchased. I would really have no issue if Blizzard or these other software companies had alternate versions for the Chinese market. I mean, heck, the way they talk about the money that's able to be made there, it seems like there'd be plenty of it to go around, plenty of it to support a few design changes for a different region version. So I have a huge problem when companies do it for and the U.S. customers or the Western customers have to have a worse experience for it. I may be small, but so what? This is the game they paid for. I also obviously dislike the PC change, the kitting down, the watering down of art in games, which is exactly what Blizzard did with these latest Hearthstone changes. They were quick to say it wasn't for China. I disagree. Or I will say that it probably wasn't intended, but they probably were like, well, we might as well do it anyway because we want to, you know, appease our Chinese overlords, our censors. Some of the cards that they changed were pretty obvious. You go from a version of Succubus here, which is a voluptuous woman with like demon horns, to they not only did they change the name, they changed the name entirely to Fellstalker. And they changed the image entirely. So they removed the woman from the card entirely and then just put like this random beast. And again, obviously if the card was this way originally, nobody cares, right? But you see a trend here. Here's one that appears to me like you would want to be appeasing sensors across the ocean. You have Bite. It's a 4-drop. They removed kind of the carnage of it, but they also removed blood, and then they just made it like a random image. Then you have Deadly Shot, where you have an arrow piercing a minotaur. Like it fits flavor-wise, and then they kind of just go down to just a random cartoon image of an arrow. Fine, I guess. 8-year-olds aren't playing Hearthstone, as far as I can tell. Wind Fury. This one is particularly egregious, in my opinion. You go from a spicily dressed woman to, yeah, she's still pretty spicy, but you'll notice they, I think, did some deflation in the chesticle area. I think they made that smaller, which is absurd. Eviscerate, we see the same card. All they did was remove this little blood spatter. This card is a card that really rings true to me, that we know how the Chinese mobile market is with depictions of blood. A lot of these cards really look like that. Then we have Secret Keeper, a pretty spicy woman. This is probably the least egregious change. I think we've had some shrinkage here up top as well, but you still kind of have her dressed relatively the same, except now her back porch isn't quite as prominently featured. Then you see Mistress of Pain. They renamed it because mistress is a negative connotation, of course, and in today's world, we simply cannot have that, and renamed it Queen of Pain. So you went from like the mistress to the almighty woman. Both women depicted pretty, this one in the original card is definitely more revealing, a thick girl. This one is mostly art, but, still a woman. I suppose where are all the people who are going to wonder how you changed a purple person into a white one? That's going to be a problem. Then we end up with Head Crack, which is really bizarre. I mean, I guess there's a little blood image here, and then they turned it into a cartoon. Again, I don't like this at all, but that's because I know why they're doing it. Cossack then eventually said, Succubus underwent the most complete transformation. The stats and the effect are the same, but the spicy, cruel demons who slake their lust with coupling are out, and pack-hunting demonic beasts are in. Mistress of Pain, now Queen of Pain, Secret Keeper, Wind Fury, Harpy, and we've seen this. They did this with a champion also. They removed, they made a higher shirt on a female champion in this game. This won't necessarily be the last batch of Hearthstone card art to be changed, Kosek said. That Blizzard doesn't have any immediate plans. It's always evaluating the set and looking at it. What this is to appease apparently one person that was offended along the line. There's an interesting article from Mr. Kosek saying, we went back and really brought everything up to our standards. Well, it's interesting because you designed the originals, but that's neither here nor there. Dave Kossak told us that after meeting and reviewing the full Hearthstone set, Blizzard decided that the art on some of the cards simply didn't meet its standards, and Blizzard wouldn't print those same cards today. It wasn't because we're looking at ratings or international regulations or anything like that. We really want our artists to feel good about everything in the set. So did an artist whine about it? I mean, these seems like these changes are so irrelevant. I mean, Hearthstone is basically on life support anyway, as far as I can understand it. So why are you wasting time with this? Blizzard has probably one of their most important years ahead of them, making sure that WoW Classic is a successful launch, as well as getting the latest Diablo game out there and not messing up Overwatch 2, because after abandoning Heroes of the Storm, and a horrible release in Battle BFA in World of Warcraft, Blizzard doesn't have a lot going for it right now, and it doesn't have a lot of good customer will either when they're rolling out store mounts and they're doing these type of changes. It's just the timing is outlandish to me. What are you thinking about? Did they get a word, somebody at Kotaku say, we're going to write a piece about how outdated your art is? Look, I played Magic the Gathering, and I've seen, I've played since 1993, and I've seen the art go from, more adult, not like overly spicy, but, the game was made for teenagers and young adults, to basically kids art now. And I suppose that's the times, but also I don't care about the art anymore like I used to. People don't collect modern day cards in Magic the Gathering like they used to because the art is all sterile and generic. That's exactly what they're doing here with Hearthstone. You know, if this was a physical card, Succubus would probably be highly collectible, especially if in a foil version, but that's neither here nor there. And then another bit of problem here. Christina Mikkonen, former community manager for Blizzard, is upset that they're hiring for a community manager. Now, if you'll remember, not that long ago, Blizzard had laid off about 800 people, including many, many, many people in the Hearthstone team. She tweeted out, "Really, Blizzard? You laid off your entire Hearthstone community team and left it in shambles. Other community managers you laid off are still looking for work, not me. And you post this? Shame on you. Shame." Anybody who says shame on you, I should unironically be, or says it unironically, should be ignored, in my opinion. Ultimately, the idea here is, hey, you just had massive layoffs not that long ago. How dare you rehire? This, I assuming, is some sort of virtue signal or a complete lack of understanding on how employment works. Here in the United States, you are an at-will employee. Layoffs happen all the time, and while most people think of layoffs as the company's doing bad, that's not necessarily true. Oftentimes, as I've gone through several layoffs, both on the end of being laid off as well as doing the decision making, when you have to cut people during layoffs, you generally cut the worst people at their jobs. Usually, like the first 80% of layoffs, the biggest chunk of layoffs are easy decisions to make. Hey, this person's like a C-grade employee. It sucks that I even have to do it, but we've got to trim fat if we want to grow. I know it sounds cruel, but that's the way the decisions work. There's a lot of easy to make decisions when you have to trim the fat, which is exactly what Blizzard had to do. After years of basically hit after hit, after the Hearthstone money dried up, they had to trim the fat. They probably had a lot of redundancy, and they used that opportunity to both remove redundancy, but also to trim fat, people that weren't the best at their jobs. Now, the implication here by this former employee says, rehire the people you laid off that are still looking for jobs. How hard is this? That's assuming they were only laid off because of financial reasons. A lot of times layoffs, again, it's way more complicated than simply we can't afford to pay you. And then this person will go on to basically endlessly tweet at or interact with the current Blizzard community manager, who ended up blocking her, saying, hey, go join the Hearthstone community team, and the guy blocked her. Well, look, if you've got a new job, and you're not bitter, why are you worried about your former company hiring positions? Ironically enough, this is a pretty Blizzard standard way of solving problems. Get rid of it and don't say anything. It doesn't exist. A reminder for those in gaming that follow me, unionize. That's right. Now you know where her head's at. You know she doesn't understand employment whatsoever at all. The idea that I've talked about this before, that game developers unionizing would do anything but give them a swift exit from employment is absurd. Nobody with any even basic understanding of economics or the business work or the workplace would ever suggest anybody they care about do this. So the fact that she's promoting joining a union, well, that tells you everything you need to know. Blizzard is hiring Hearthstone community managers, having laid the whole team off 5 months ago. And by the way, a lot can change in 5 months. Maybe they've had better than expected projections on WoW Classic, or maybe Diablo's closer than we think, or maybe they have had, a lot can change in 5 months. All right. In February this year, Activision Blizzard announced that more than 800 employees would be losing their jobs as a part of a company-wide layoffs. Now it looks like Blizzard is beginning to rehire for some of those roles, despite axing them just a few months ago. Earlier this week, a job listing in the Hearthstone community manager was posted on the developer's career page. A role asked for an experienced community manager passionate about the gaming industry, player communities, live events, and player relationships. So maybe they've gotten more money and they're planning on reinvesting in Hearthstone. I mean, when I had to lay people off, we laid off almost 60% of our workforce. It was brutal. It's why I quit working for that company, because I just didn't ever want to do that again. Our business did change. And within a few months, we were hiring again. And we hired back the good ones that were laid off. But just because you were laid off didn't mean I was going to automatically hire you back. Times change. you took that opportunity, unfortunately, for the laid off people to upgrade. That's just the way business works. I'm not saying it feels good. I'm just saying that's how it is. Now, employees have suggested that the most recent listings are not the first examples of Blizzard hiring for roles that were axed earlier this year. Around 8% of the company lost their jobs as a result of Activision Blizzard's cutbacks, which came after the company announced record profits. Again, you can see where they're kind of spinning this article. I agree that, of course, this is horrible optics for Blizzard, especially for people that want to work for Blizzard. But the reality is, layoffs happen all the time, and they're almost never simply because, well, all of you are equal, and this was a tough decision. Usually the people that get laid off are the ones that they might be nice people, but they're just not the best person for that job. Maybe they were brought on in a time of bloat, which is what I think happened with Blizzard. Nonetheless, the optics suck. Everything looks bad. None of it is as bad as the censorship, but nonetheless, that's modern Blizzard for you. A new train wreck every day. I hope you enjoyed this video. We'll talk to you again real soon.